Hey everyone, it's June 15th, 2017, and this is your episode 100 of At Percussion.
Woo!
Okay, and so we're doing a no guest episode. We thought we'd just keep this one all to ourselves, so in no particular order, our original cast of hosts, Megan Arns.
Hello.
And Ben Charles.
Hi everybody.
And right here is Laurel Black.
Hi.
So how do you guys feel about 100 episodes?
This is crazy. I don't want to say that I didn't think that we would get here, because I knew we would get here, but it feels crazy to do something 100 times every week.
I have to say, for me,
That's
this was
awesome.
kind of the marker where I said, okay, let's plan on inventing this podcast, and we'll at least go to 100. And if it's too difficult, or it's the reaction from people is bad or something, 100 is where we'll stop. But I have to say, like, it's
You have to say that this is the end of the podcast.
yeah,
so
like
for
it's
everyone
easily,
listening,
right,
I'm
right.
sorry.
It's like
this is the end of the podcast.
Like, this would have been the end, but I'm happy to say that because there was listener enthusiasm and people are writing in and people are showing interest and we keep getting guests and you guys keep giving reports, that it's only gotten easier, which is really cool. So
we're
yeah.
not stopping the podcast.
Correct.
I thought we were stopping the podcast.
I think we need to do exactly one more episode, actually, because if I recall correctly, Tom Burrett did 100 episodes of his Percussion Axiom TV. So we need to do one more to pass Tom Burrett. Then we're good.
101.
Yeah, just one more, yeah. No, in
No, I
fact,
think
Megan,
that
we've
would
got
be-
someone booked. We've got someone booked for 101 already.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would be this has like become such a part of my life, you know? I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but it's like, it's the Sunday activity, and it would be really bummed if we stopped.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think the good thing is it seems like there's a lot more still to talk about and a lot more people. I don't see us running out of people.
Oh.
That was something I was afraid of, is that we would run out of interesting guests, and I still have like a laundry list in my head of people that we could ask.
I know.
Here's a question for everybody. How has the podcast turned out to be in accordance with your expectations, or maybe contrary to your expectations? Start with Laurel. You haven't said anything yet.
I expected to like having a yet another reason to read a lot. Like, I love to read. It's one of my normal activities, but I figured I would enjoy having an outlet to talk about it and to share it with more people.
But it's more just been a burden.
And I have liked it. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I did learn. I've always known I'm a better communicator in writing, but I learned I'm more long-winded in writing. So then when I try to talk about it, I tend to ramble. So I learned that about myself. And I tend to go a little long. So I guess that's mine. Very self-centered.
Yeah. What do you think,
My
Ben?
comments.
For me,
Well,
I guess sort of similar to Laurel, like I've enjoyed learning things about percussion history, and I learned a lot of the stuff I've talked about in Mersha's percussion literature class. But it's been interesting learning just for the sake of learning, because when you have to write a research paper, it feels very structured, and you have to document everything and all that sort of thing. But it's fun for me just to sort of go online and say, today I want to learn about Bartok or something, and just learn about something without trying to make some sort of formal paper or something like that. And so, yeah, and I mean, for me, teaching, it's made me kind of make my students learn a lot more about the context of what they're playing.
Yeah, sure. Anything for you, Megan?
Yeah, two things. Well, one is getting to know, I guess I expected this, and that was one of the reasons I was excited about this, but getting to know your guys' circle of friends and the people that inspire you and the people that you want to talk to, because I think, we all kind of come from different places. And so, seeing an upcoming guest on the list and being like, I don't even know who that is. Awesome. And then, learning about that person and then talking to that person, I feel like it's kind of expanded my circle of percussion friends, and not even percussion people, but, sports people and composers and writers, and so that's really awesome, and I'm really excited to keep expanding that circle. And then, as for my segments, I think at first it was really easy for me to find topics like, oh yeah, I'm going to talk about this because I love this, and I'm going to talk about this because I love this, and I know something about this and this and this and this. And then eventually it was like, okay, it's not that I don't know anything anymore, but it kind of forced me to be like, okay, well, it's not coming so easy anymore. And it kind of forced me to start looking outside, or even outside of percussion a little bit more, of finding things that are relative to us, but not what we already know, like PASIC and, I don't know, whatever, other things that we all know as percussionists, but kind of looking internationally and also outside of our discipline a little bit. It's gotten a little bit harder in that way, but more rewarding also, I think. I've learned a lot more.
Yeah, sure. I have to say one of my initial plans for myself and goals was to give myself a weekly push to try to prepare something, because I've always had that, oh yeah, I'm really going to read up on this, or I'm really going to research that, and just having a little assignment every couple of weeks was did the trick. So a lot of those discoveries were really fun, like the Ben's segment on Nankaro was great because I learned so much extra things because I did a little bit of research and bumped into something I would have never expected, or the one I did on wax cylinder recording recovery, that was really, really cool. And I don't know, it's just nice because I wouldn't have thought to bother to look into those things that difficult if we didn't have to every week.
Has Nankaro crept into your compositions at all, Casey?
Oh, probably somewhere in there.
Multi-tempo stuff going on.
The music boxes.
But yeah, piggybacking off of what Megan said, I think in addition to meeting each other's circle of friends, it's been interesting to meet our circle of teachers, because some of the teachers, for example, Michael Burritt is someone that I'm very familiar with just because he's Michael Burritt, but I've never taken a lesson with, hadn't had a conversation with, or anything like that. So it was interesting for me to get different teachers' perspectives on teaching.
Yeah, totally. Sure. We got to know him recently, which I guess is a nice segue into my next little section of topics. But I guess it was late May, we did the big festival in Taiwan again, and I got to share a concert. Guys, this totally freaked me out. So I was on a concert called Masters, and it was a recital, a 90-minute recital, and we each had about 25 minutes or something. But Michael Burritt, Jean Chauffois, Emmanuel Sejourné, Momoko Kamiya, Shi Wu, and me. And I was just,
yay, Casey!
It's cool.
Who was before you and after you in that concert?
Yeah, it's terrifying, but it's awesome.
Did you have to follow Momoko? Because forget it.
I had to follow. Who did I follow? I followed Shi. And after was Jean?
I don't think Jean was on that concert.
Oh, he was on my concert, yeah.
Oh, he was?
Yeah, because he did the thing with his phone. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, I felt, and of course I'm not saying, I haven't accomplished stuff, but those guys are kind of in a different, I'm real happy about it and everything, but I was a little scared. I didn't quite feel like, I don't know if I feel accomplished, but I don't quite feel like Emmanuel Sejourné and Jean Chauffois, of course, and definitely not Momoko Kamiya. So I don't know. I think it went, Shi, myself, Jean. Yeah.
Did you guys all play something together too, or did everyone do kind of their own?
Our own thing. Mike Burr and Emmanuel played something together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Momoko brought the house down. Everybody loved.
I mean, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody loved Momoko.
She's one of the most ridiculous players. I mean, not to put down anyone else on that concert. They're all amazing, but Momoko Kamiya is just out of this world. I mean...
Yeah, she can shred. Yeah, it's way cool.
Yeah, I'd never seen her play before, and she was the one that when I saw her name, I was like,
yeah.
That's awesome. Has she played it basic recently at all? I mean, I definitely have not seen her play either.
I saw her play.
She did. It was a while ago, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I don't know when that would have been. the time I saw her was at Fernando Meza's 2010 big marimba festival, which also equally freaked me out because for similar reasons. But yeah. Very cool. I don't know if you guys saw my picture on Facebook of Laurel and I playing that giant gong.
Yes.
So
I wanted to hear what was going along with that picture so bad.
Oh man, it was really, really cool. So I was really surprised to find out that that's the 5th one of those that they've made and they've sold. So if you want to take any guesses.
How much?
So yeah, 16,000 US.
Okay.
Which is actually cheaper than I thought. I thought
for sure cheaper than I was thinking.
I was guessing
a marimba or giant
gong. Or a giant gong, but it was really surprising to me because I've heard of companies making really, really big gongs, but it's been for like trade shows. Paiste brings their giant gong to a big trade show, and people it's a big attraction to the booth.
They're a novelty item.
It's a novelty item. And so that's kind of what I thought this was, but we were really surprised to find out, no, this is the 5th one they've made and sold. So the interesting thing I thought is that the reason these are bought are for Eastern medical reasons. So you hit the gong and you can diagnose what's going on in the body depending on how the patient's body reacts to the gong.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was
actually
cool.
Just having a conversation about that this morning, and and also like sound therapy.
Yeah.
And you know how this is a part of other cultures, but we've kind of identified this as a field of sound therapy for us.
Mm-hmm. It's cool. I had no idea.
I don't know much about that, but maybe I'll do a segment on that sometime. Somebody was telling me that I don't know much about it, but it sounds really interesting. It's like, well, we do that all the time, but
yeah.
I don't know. It's another
in
field.
Addition to the gong photo, I enjoyed the photo of all the performers that Casey was talking about, because it's like Michael Burritt, Casey, Shi Wu, Emmanuel Sejourné, and then, like everyone was short except for Sejourné, who's super tall.
He's super tall.
I know, he's so big.
But Casey, I was wondering, obviously it was a long time ago, I did a segment on Mr. Ju and Ju percussion, and can you tell us more about this Ju, what's the official name? Taiwan International Percussion Festival, something like that?
Yeah, that's right. So of course the Ju Percussion Group is a very busy touring percussion ensemble, and as far as I can tell, they kind of have three big things they do. One is the older group of professionals doing the contemporary percussion ensemble music, and then they also have the youth group, and then they have the educational little kid stuff that they do that appears on television, and they go to elementary schools, and I think that's a big part of how they have support and their following. So yeah, the festival itself, they added a new component this year, which was the competition. So in addition to that performance, I also judged the percussion quartet competition, and the first prize was $15,000. And they also had a marimba competition, first place, also $15,000. So they're going to start doing this every 2 years. And with that kind of money, I mean, it's going to be on the map.
Who won those?
For sure. Sad in a way that it was both two groups from Taiwan. So I guess that's not too surprising. Taiwan's right there. More people are going to compete and apply from Taiwan. Mm-hmm. But in a way, I kind of felt like, shoot, that's probably not, it doesn't help them look great when that happens. But it was also very clear. I mean, all the judges were in agreement, and it was very easy. There was
you
a
had
nice
an international panel of judges, so.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it felt fine, but it also was kind of like, oh man, it would have been nice if a foreign group won, just since, I don't know, it would show some encouragement for more people to come. But second place was still...
I think second and third in each category was from other countries.
Yeah, they were, but do you
Okay.
remember what the prize money was? 8,000?
I thought it was 8 and 3.
Yeah, so it's still like
Dang.
a ton of money. I know, right? So 15
Yeah.
in each category, so that's 30,000. Second place, 8,000 in each category, 16, and then another 3 in each. So
Don't quote me on that, but I thought it was something like
I'm
that.
quite sure that's what
That's
it
excellent.
was.
That's an almost Tchaikovsky competition money right there.
Exactly. So yeah, it's scary to think out there that there are these competitions struggling to get any prize money, and then there's something like this, and they all have to compete because students can only afford to do so many things every. So in a way, it's really good. Wow, here's this new competition, but you also worry like, oh no, does that mean that these other competitions are going to suffer or whatever? But I don't know. I mean, it was really great though. I mean, I can't imagine they could have ran it better. It was really, really smooth.
Did you hear in either category? Did you hear any either new pieces that you weren't familiar with that sounded amazing, or old pieces that just got played really, really well? I'm sure you did.
Yeah.
Anything stick out?
In both cases, and I'm really wish I had the program with me because I knew you'd ask about rep because you always do. Doll's House Story was a common one it got played once, but that was one, and that Zivkovic Taknara.
Taknara.
Taknara, thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, that one got done. The second place group did that. And
What was the first one you said?
A Doll's House Story?
Okay,
Or sorry, Doll's House Story. It's one of those Amadinda commissions
gotcha.
and premieres and famous recordings. And actually, on our previous 2 episodes, you'll hear Zoltan Rotz talk about that a lot. Yeah, because there's some cool history and some cool political strife around that piece that just most people don't even, you wouldn't know unless you were from Hungary. So it's cool to hear him talk about that stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's weird
Have
to
you-
talk about that now when that episode's not released yet, but by the time this is released, it'll be 2 episodes old.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Have you guys heard of the M Prize?
no,
Yes, the
Yes.
Michigan one.
Yeah, it's at University of Michigan, and when you're talking about that prize money, we were saying that it's a lot. The prize money for that is $100,000.
wow,
Isn't that crazy? And at first it was like, whoa, that's a lot. And my first thought was like, I've been thinking about this more and more. Is that that is just a statement that artists deserve to be paid, or that artists need money to survive, to, have a life, a comfortable life that they can make their art and deserve that. And so I think by, they could have taken that money and put it in other places. And instead it's like, no, we're going to use this giant chunk of change to jumpstart to help you make music because it doesn't pay very well, at least in our country.
The M Prize is it's open chamber ensemble, right? It could be any instrumentation. Because I mean, like, here's a thought. Like, honestly, the amount of equipment So Percussion has is probably $100,000 or more. I mean,
sure, of course, yeah. Well, the winner this year was the Russian Renaissance, and it's they're described they're from Moscow, Russia, and it's called or they're described as, quote, high caliber traditional folk music through a modern lens. It's a quartet, and so also you're kind of saying having someone win from another country. It was cool to hear that. I'm glad it wasn't. I'm not glad that it was an American group, but it's nice to see an international group having put through so much effort and travel to compete and do so well. It's really cool. But I mean, I think this is the second year for the M Prize. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's only the second year, but also because of that giant prize money, it garners a lot of attention and, has a lot of participation from all over the world.
That would feel like winning the lottery. I mean, that's so much money. I mean, yeah, for us, effectively, I don't really know what I could do with any more money than that. So it basically means that's so much money.
I know, that's crazy.
Yeah, interesting. The Jew group you mentioned, So Percussion Equipment. They played this piece that used 100 gongs on stage.
Wow.
And you guys saw the really big one that I said was about $16,000 US. The best range for those tuned gongs to me is that lower medium end, about I don't know, how big is that, 20 inches or so, 25 inches, something like that. That is just the sweetest tone, and that's just really the sweet range of the instrument, in my opinion. So, of course, the gongs get really small, and then they also get that massive big, but that's really the sweet spot. And those cost about $5,000. And these guys had about, how many of that size on stage, do you think?
At least 2 octaves?
2 octaves? No, but of
the
those
pitches they needed.
Sure, but of like the pretty big ones, probably like 8 of them or something.
Wow.
Okay, and then of course they had, they had lots of smaller ones, and they had really little ones, and
Were they Thai gongs?
Are they Thai gongs? Let's see. Well, they're the tuned nipple gongs.
Yeah.
Are those Thai gongs?
Maybe. I feel I don't really know the difference, because you've got all these different kinds of Balinese gong, different kinds of Indonesian gongs. But the ones that we most commonly use here in the States, it seems like, are almost always Thai gongs with the gold sketched out that we order from Steve Weiss.
Thai gong might be sort of a generic American name.
Interesting.
Because I mean, having played in a gamelan, like, they're not. I guess generally the Thai gongs that I've seen, and only the ones that I've seen, are smaller. I don't know what your experience is, Megan. You've also done gamelan, but Thai gongs, I think of like the 6 to 8 inch range, and the Balinese gongs, though, are very similar. They just happen to be maybe 30 inches or so, significantly larger.
But the Thai gongs go all the way down. I mean,
but I'm just saying the ones that I've seen.
These ones. So the design you said, Megan, that we get from Steve Weiss, these ones, they're a little flatter. The bulb is not as pointed.
Okay.
So it's a little more rounded, and it's more like this as opposed to that.
I see.
And actually, we learned they hammer that thing all the way out just by hand. Maybe this is old news to everyone listening and you guys, but I had no idea that they just physically hammered it out. And they actually let us each take a whack at one. They were making one. They just had a flat piece of metal, and they let us each, myself, Laurel, Julie Hill, and Brian Zader, and our new DMA student who brought us to the factory. He's from Taiwan. Kai Pa Lon, he brought us there, and we all got to take a whack at it, and I couldn't even make a dent in it, and I hit it hard.
That's so crazy.
Did they talk about how they cast them?
Yeah, that too.
So, okay, now it's getting out of my knowledge, but I think they literally cut this metal, and then they hammer it, like even making the round shape. Yeah. They hammer all of that, so they take it's just a rectangle. They take a rectangle and hammer it this way until it curves.
Because Ford has I don't know what country it's from, some big gong, but I think, from what I remember, I think he said he was there when they poured it, and I think for that he said they actually like dug out something in the ground and they poured the melted bronze or whatever in. So I don't know.
And that's what I was expecting to see, and we didn't see anything like that. No pouring or anything. I think it was all cutting and hammering, and then there must be welding at some point. But yeah, pretty interesting.
Didn't see that.
But back to the gear. So I told you all these gongs, and however much money you want to figure out that is. They also had another set of those, another 100 gongs en route to Moscow for their next gig. So they have 2 sets of those things.
Wow, that's
pretty
crazy. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty bonkers. But enough about me in Taiwan. What have you guys been doing this summer?
Who wants to go first?
I'll go because I probably had the least exciting.
Cool.
Musically, the least exciting. I've visited some family, but no one on the podcast wants to hear about that. I'm gonna be an uncle, hooray! But so I decided to try and really focus in on music this summer. So I'm preparing for a big recital next year that I'm going to split with our trumpet professor. So I just finished learning a couple pieces. I learned Ilyich, and I recently decided I wanted to use Mr. Zhivkovich's mallets for that, which are way heavier than my Keiko Abe mallets, which are already heavy. So it's been interesting relearning how to play marimba with mallets that weigh twice as much as what I'm used to, but it's going
a nice happy middle of that would be the Cangelosi mallets.
Too expensive.
Nice medium.
Send me some on rattan, and I'd love to play with them. But then I'm also learning a piece by Andy Akiho called Intuition Expectation. Do you guys know this piece at all? It's a trumpet and marimba duo, and it's wicked hard because it has certain parts of it where the two hands have to function independently, so one hand has its own dynamics relative to the other, and they move up and down independently. And it also has some crazy rhythms, like subdivided fivelets, so I've been working on that. And the Yoshioka Rhapsody for chamber ensemble, amongst other things. So got quite a few irons in the fire here. But that's kind of my summer, is just
Well, I went to Rochester to graduate, which was fun. Yay! And then I went to Michigan. I was recording a CD with a group called What Is Noise? And that was our first CD. So that was a lot of fun. It was a great recording studio. Good experience up there in Kalamazoo. And now I'm on a cross-country road trip with a close friend. And I wanted to talk. I had some awesome percussion adventures the last 2 days because I visited the Marimba One factory in Arcata, California. And I bought a Marimba One, I guess, 9 years ago, and have always loved that instrument, and have also just really been interested in the way that it was made, and interested in the sustainability of rosewood and the safety of its existence. And I always try to go talk to Ron at PASIC about rosewood and about his process and how the business is doing and things like that, and have worked for him for a couple of conventions and learned even more about it then. And so I kind of always saw this as like a pilgrimage, going to Arcata and actually seeing where the marimbas are made, and it was amazing. I mean, it's an incredible operation, and we're going to have him on the podcast here in a few weeks. He can tell us more about the process then. But I definitely have to say that if anyone is in California, I mean, it's totally out of the way. It's not close to San Francisco. I think it's 4 hours, 5 hours.
Will he let someone just go visit? Can you just kind of email and say, hey, I'm a percussionist, I'd love to see the factory?
I'm sure that's exactly what I did. Yeah, I mean, cool. I'm sure you could totally do that. It's just not really on the way to anywhere. Mm-hmm. But it's beautiful out there in Arcata, and it was a cool town to visit. There's some breweries there as well, lots of camping, and there's it's just north of the Redwood Forest. And yeah, it was a really pretty drive to get up there. But the operation was super impressive, and just talking to him about sustainability and what he does, how he's making vibraphones now, so kind of how that came to be. But he's such a dedicated craftsman. I mean, he really, really knows what he's doing and is absolutely dedicated to getting the best possible sounding instruments. And so it's cool to see that in action. So we'll talk to him in a couple of weeks. Then I went a little further north, and I went to Eugene, because I've been playing mbira, the Shona instrument from Zimbabwe, for about 7 years. There's an ensemble at Eastman. I'm sure I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I had learned there at Eastman and have been playing ever since then. Now have a group at Mizzou. And so I'm always trying to learn more and more. And this music is taught by ear. You can't just buy method books. So you have to find Zimbabwean artists to learn from. That's hard to do in central Missouri. I found this woman in Eugene who runs an arts center called the Kutsinira Cultural Arts Center. And she has been doing this since 1990. The center was founded. And one of the big things that she does is she gets artist visas for the Zimbabwean artists. Or I'm able to bring them to Missouri because she has brought them to Eugene first for this cultural arts center. They're in residence there, and then they will go tour. So a little bit about the center. I have their website pulled up here. It's called Kutsinhira. If anyone's interested, it's spelled Kutsinhira, Cultural Arts Center in Eugene. And it's a nonprofit organization dedicated to studying and sharing the music of Zimbabwe. It was founded in 1990 to continue the work of Dr. Dumisani, or Dumi Maraire, And he's a Shono master musician who was a grad student. I believe he was a grad student he was a doctoral student at the University of Washington. And he kind of introduced the Pacific Northwest to Zimbabwean music. And now there are all these marimba bands. I cannot wait to learn more about this. I'll do on a segment about it when I learn more about it. But there are these giant marimbas that play traditional Shono music on them, but also new compositions. And it's kind of a new thing to Zimbabwe. But it's incredibly popular in Zimbabwe and also in the Pacific Northwest. And so at the center, they had a marimba band. So we got to sit in with the band and kind of see what they do and learn a little bit of one song. But they have community groups. The particular group that we sat in was a group of 5 or 6 women who had been playing for 5 years together. And they weren't musicians. I don't think they were musicians. Definitely not professional musicians, but they were so dedicated, and they've been doing it for a week they do it weekly have been doing that for 5 years. So it's like very embedded into the community, in Eugene, but also in the Pacific Northwest. And it was cool to kind of see it in action. So that's Kutsuneer Cultural Arts Center.
Wow,
Stop
great.
by if you're ever in Eugene.
Yeah, way to go. I see you didn't visit our buddy Pius Chang. Good move on that.
I didn't get in touch with him.
You sound so happy to not.
The hardest thing about this road trip is that it's like, you're like, okay, I'm going to be here and here and here and here, but you forget like how much time it takes to get from one place to the next. So it's like, okay, we can do one thing or do one hike in each of these places, and then we got to drive for 8 hours,
For sure. Yeah, like PASIC a little bit. There's so many people. Can we grab a drink or a coffee?
I know. And
it's impossible to even do a tenth of them. It's just a little bit nuts. Laurel, what'd you do?
Not everyone's as popular as you at PASIC, Casey.
A tenth, Ben. Did you hear that? A tenth. I'm keeping
I'm like,
score.
anyone want to grab lunch?
Oh, man. Yeah, it's exhausting. Laurel, where did you go? You went to New Music Gathering, right?
I did. So my duo, L&M duo, performed this year at New Music Gathering. And I don't know if you guys know what this is, but I'd heard of it just a little bit before we applied to play. So I thought I would just share with everybody what it was, or what it is, excuse me. So 5 composers began this conference called New Music Gathering, where they just wanted to have groups of people come together and talk about new music and what they were doing all over the country. And it was held for the 3rd time this year at Bowling Green State University. The first one was in San Francisco, and then last year it was in Baltimore, and this was year 3 at BGSU. It consists of lectures, concerts, presentations, and panel discussions that are all about new music, and that's usually built around some sort of theme, and this year that was support. So everything had to do with either building community and how to become part of community, or it was about grant writing, or in the case of a vocal lecture that I went to, it was about like supporting the voice and understanding the actual anatomy to support it properly with air. And the mix of instrumentations was really cool to me. Like, I didn't know how I would like it because I was looking at the things that were being presented, and some of it was so specific, like about this particular technique on the flute, and you're like, well, yeah, that might be interesting, but I also might be really bored, and you just don't know, but you just go to see. And it turns out that everybody is such an expert in what they're doing that it's interesting just to see how much they know. And for example, I went to this vocal lecture and I learned so much about the voice, and I kind of like to think that I know a little bit about that, having played for singers for a number of years at this point, but it was really pretty mind-blowing. It was really very cool. And Marianne and I were part of a concert just called a Grab Bag of Awesome concert. So it was all of these different artists, and both for us, and then every single concert that took place, you had so much time for load in and setup and a sound check. And they even accommodated a rehearsal for us, which is pretty incredible because I've played at other places, not PASIC, but other conferences where you don't have time. Like, you have like 5 minutes to get in the room and then play, and that's it.
You have played at PASIC.
I have, but PASIC was not as rushed as that. Like we had
Oh, I
a
get
little
it.
under
I
an
get it.
hour.
I
You
get
know,
it.
that was
Yeah.
at least time.
Yeah.
And a big highlight of New Music Gathering is something they call performer-composer speed dating, which is exactly what it sounds like. So it's this big room, and you have a circle of composers, and then inside that you have a circle of performers, and there's a giant gong in the middle. Gong seems to be the theme for the day,
Yeah, it
I
is.
guess. There's a big gong in the middle.
But was it like giant?
I mean, no, it was like a typical. And I guess it was technically a tam-tam, not a gong. But anyway.
Did you tell them that they should invest in a $16,000 gong from Taiwan?
Yeah, I need to tell them, like, you guys aren't doing this right.
Yeah.
And so you have like 3 minutes to meet performer composer, and you just talk to each other about what you do, and then they smack the gong and you rotate, and you just meet people this way. And it turned out to be like one of the coolest things of the conference, because you're just forced to talk to someone about what you do. And that's not typically what happens, but, you know, Marianne and I met some women who were composers that we thought were really, really cool, so we hope to commission them. But it's funny, like, how quickly you can tell if a collaboration is going to work, or if, you know, if you just don't gel. And it's okay not to gel, but, you know, you can tell pretty quickly.
Interesting.
The only other thing I will say about it is that this year, the kind of guest of honor was Steve Schick, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And so he gave a big opening address that I missed, but is all over the internet, written out to find. And he gave a solo recital at the opening concert, which was, of course, fantastic.
Yeah.
As we all know. And people at the conference talked about his opening speech the whole time. Like, everyone was so moved by this. And I did copy out just a few bits and pieces, if you guys don't mind if I read it.
Did anyone
Please.
mention his at Percussion
Sure.
episode?
Yeah, he basically just played his Percussion
Yeah, that's
episode
all
on a projector.
Yeah. Yeah, it should take like 2 minutes
Yeah,
to
go.
read, but
Let's hear it.
keeping in mind that the theme of the gathering was support, and the subtitle of his speech was "In Pursuit of an Externally Facing Artistic Practice." And I'm starting kind of in the middle towards the end of his speech. Today, with the responsibility I feel toward my art, to my students and my community, and with what I know about our world, music as a soloistic venture is not sustainable. The simplicity of hitting things can wait. What I need now is the sustenance of a rich connection between music and the rest of life. In order to make music, I need 3 healthy relationships: with the materials of my art, with the world around me, and with the people with whom I share it. These are the building blocks of what I think of as an externally facing artistic practice. The goal of an externally facing practice is to become as complete a human being as possible, in whose life music plays a central and defining role. On the other hand, the goal of an internally facing practice, the default stance of much academic training, especially in this country, is to be the most skilled musician possible. A rich and rewarding extra-musical life is secondary. The external view is built on education, the internal one on training. An externally facing practice demands that we transcend the claustrophobia of the concert hall and imagine our art not as a set of skills, but as an ethical orientation to the world. Action on a social level is not simply a matter of making music as well as possible. I am increasingly troubled by Leonard Bernstein's response, formulated in the aftermath of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, that to heal a grievous wound, we must, quote, make music more intensely, more beautifully, more devoted. Hey, perhaps that was enough for Bernstein in A Nation United in Grief, but it seems like a hollow dictum now, since at this moment we are not united, but rent by savage cross-currents of contention, bigotry, and cruelty. And anyway, are we not already making music as intensely as possible? What would it mean to go further than Bernstein? Or as one San Diego church posted recently on its marquee, what would you do if you were brave? I ask us to hear the voice within each of us that reminds us that music is not merely a set of skills. Making music today must be about nothing less than asserting moral force. It must be about how we who have so much and who live so fully, can act responsibly in a world where so many have so little. It must be about the voices too faint to hear. And he closes with a poem by Wendell Berry called The Real Work. It might be that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work. And that when we no longer know which way to go, we've come to our real journey. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings. And then he just said, "Thank you for listening." And that was the end.
Cool.
Oh my gosh. Steve Schick for president.
I know.
Yeah.
It's great.
Please.
And you can, if you just search like New Music Gathering Steve Schick speech, you can find the whole transcript.
Cool. Yeah, had heard some people talking about that already. Yeah, I need to read that. It's really amazing.
It's really, I really appreciate him. It seems like he isn't just doing the same thing that he's been doing for 30 years that he knows works. Like I don't get the sense he's reading the speech he's been saying for, like we've been to that clinic. In fact, we were at a clinic. I won't say who because I'm going to be polite right for now. You had notes from this clinic, this guest artist from how many years ago?
Was it Pius?
6 years before?
6, yeah, totally. That guy. Yeah. 6 years ago. And it was just like you pulled out your notebook and as this person was talking, okay, there's that, like word for word, and
exactly.
And I mean, I know sometimes you have to do what you've done, but I don't know. I appreciate the motivation of doing this again for who you are now, all these years later, and maybe there's some listener out there that's saying, no, Casey, you're wrong. He's been saying that for a long time, but I don't think so. I haven't heard any of it, and I've listened to a whole lot of what he has out there. And of course, what's in the book, and I haven't
He's
haven't
also
heard
just
any
a
of that, so.
supremely intelligent human being that could talk for days on end and hold anyone's interest, really.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what I was going to say is that we're so lucky to have him in something that, like, I mean, he can do a lot of things that a lot of us cannot do, but something that he is so gifted in is that he's such an eloquent speaker, Yeah. And so to have him be a keynote speaker at such an important event, I think that the more people he can reach, the better. I mean,
yeah.
I appreciate another book.
Yeah, there's a part of the speech that I did not mention where he talks about what he talked about with us, that pilgrimage walk he was taking, and he thought it was going to be this huge, like, I'm going to be like John Cage and write about the sounds that I hear and it's art, and then he realized, like, no, I'm just walking to propose to my girlfriend, and my idea about this is garbage. Like, and I love that he just said that. Like, I had this idea and I thought it was going to be so smart and so heady, and then I realized it was stupid.
It wasn't, and that's okay. So I moved on.
Yeah, and I just like that because I feel like there can be a tendency, we feel like we have to defend what we do to the point that we think like, oh, if I just talk about it really smartly and really intelligently, it will become more valid. It's like, no, sometimes we need to say that was a dumb idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Do you guys... Oh, I'm sorry, Megan, go ahead.
I don't know. I guess I've just been kind of reflecting over the past couple weeks since school's been out and there's a little more time just on the importance of, kind of along the lines of what Steve was saying, of just like our responsibility as human beings, but also as musicians and percussionists, the more specific we get. But the importance of like having clarity and room to breathe and think and to make sure that we are doing what we do, and especially all of the four of us as educators, that we're like leading 10 to 20 people along the same path, like making sure that you're on the right path and that you're doing things ethically and for a reason, not just because the curriculum has changed. I was thinking about this too. Even when reading this book that we've been talking about, Patty's book, it's like the curriculum, the percussion curriculum has changed because the percussion world has changed. And
talking
especially
about Steve Schick, I remember hearing Steve very directly talk about his teacher at Iowa, who said he taught him the basics of, snare drum techniques and things for, I think it was 1 year, and then it was like, all right, Steve, you're on your own. This is out of my league.
Yeah.
After that, yeah.
Yeah, but you just can't coast, You have to be reflecting and changing, and it's a lot of responsibility to be an educator. I've been thinking about this a lot, It's a lot of responsibility to be a human being that is fortunate, like all of us are, but also then to lead 20 other fortunate people along with you who look up to you. It's a lot of responsibility.
Well, and back to the comparison of what I'm assuming is a fairly new speech from Stephen Schick that Laurel just quoted from, and this clinician that I was mentioning. I think I disagree in a way, Megan. I mean, you can coast, but I don't think you should.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because some people do coast, and of course they can. But I mean, if you want to move people, like you said, people were crying after this, right? It's just saying if you do want to do that, which I think we all want to do, the lesson there to be learned is, yeah, man, don't just coast, like try to do something really, try to do something profound. It's like Christopher Dean said at PASIC regarding composition, and he's worried people aren't trying to be impactful and profound anymore. They're trying to do what they know sells, and, you can do that, but come on, man, don't,
Yeah.
Like let's try to like really move people and try to like really do stuff that matters.
On that note, talking about what we're doing this summer, Casey, you've had quite a few new YouTube videos, and one thing I've noticed about your music is that it's, like we're talking about here, it's changing. Like, you used to write a lot of sort of jock marimba pieces, and
Screw
even
you.
like I mean, those were your words when you came to Florida, so
It's true.
But like your jock marimba pieces now, like the one you wrote, was it called A Little Spat, is totally way more far out musically than anything that I've heard in the past. And it's been really enjoyable to see these new videos you're putting out and see how your composition is evolving.
Man, thanks a lot for noticing, and you're exactly right, and it's interesting looking back at the older pieces and what I want to write now. And I think I share this with most composers. They look at some of their older stuff and they go, oh man, that's so bad, and I might just get rid of that. That's just not my voice anymore. But I think I'm a little lucky in that I go like, oh yeah, okay, that was cool for me back then. Well, I mean, so it'll be cool for someone else that in that same like age. Or
look at what Liszt did. I mean, he wrote these virtuosic piano pieces that were just showy pieces. I mean, there's not that much musically fulfilling about all these Liszt showy pieces other than they're just really freaking impressive to watch. But then he stopped that and he studied composition seriously and wrote his symphonic poems, and which are totally way different from the old Liszt. And it's sort of what we're seeing from you, Casey, is like you have these old sort of Franz Liszt marimba pieces, and then now we get the Gender of Metal or whatever the newer, more out there stuff.
I think that's a completely accurate comparison. Cangelosi Liszt. I think it's really good. No, but seriously, thanks. But really, thanks a lot. That's
you can
really
put that
nice.
one in your tenure file.
Well. Back to seriously. Thank you. It was really kind. But back to the kind of the theme of the 100th episode here being this podcast. Something I've learned, and my colleagues have expressed to me when I describe what we've done on this podcast and some of the guests we've had and the topics we've covered in the form I have to fill out for my first year review and now my third year review, the podcast falls under the category of like outstanding long-term service project. So there's like satisfactory teaching, satisfactory service, satisfactory creative activity, whatever, and then the highest one in at least the worded description at JMU, the podcast definitely falls under, which is a surprise for me. I had no idea this would count for like anything. I thought at most it would count for creative activity, but the way my colleagues have explained it to me, they say no, it's service.
Yeah.
So hopefully it does that for all of us. Yeah. Do you guys I have another podcast question for you guys. Do you have a favorite segment that one of your co-hosts presented? Not one that you did, but one your co-host did? It's probably not fair to spring this on you, but does one come to mind? I'll start while you guys while you guys are thinking.
It better be one of mine.
Well, I do. I could certainly come up with a favorite from everyone. The one that I'll say for me was Ben. Well, actually, it's yours and Ben's, Laurel, because you talked about Ballet Mécanique and Ben talked about Antheil. So yeah, from you guys doing that, I went and did all this learning of Hedy Lamarr and what she did and that whole thing. And yeah, that was like exactly the kind of thing I'm trying to get out of this. Someone else is going to present something, and then I accidentally learned something else. So it was like really, really satisfying, I thought. Yeah, Ben, you look viewing the Blogspot page.
That is literally what I'm doing.
I can tell. He has this kind of blank stare on his face, like.
I'll do that right now.
Yeah, I wish I had thought of this.
The screen is flashing. Yeah, sorry, it's not really fair.
I mean,
Thanks
like,
a lot,
I'm sure.
Casey.
I know, my bad.
I'm not sure.
I feel
Well,
like
I'll go. I mean, I thought that I love anything about, like a strong woman, especially from the early 20th century. So I actually really liked learning about Hedy Lamarr. I thought she was pretty much a badass. But
I'm sorry.
I also like the historical things that Ben does, because I was supposed to have a class like that, but they canceled it and then just gave me credit for it. So I feel like I lost out on this huge opportunity to learn things, but I feel like I've gotten it through Ben on the podcast, so it's okay.
Sure.
Okay, I can sort of answer this question without really having looked through enough. But my favorite interaction, I think, was on Sriji's episode when Laurel talked about like mindfulness, and then Sriji jumped in and talked about, what was the analogy he made, like how an elephant, or not an elephant, how a monkey and a kitten raise their babies.
That was great. Yeah, I remember
teachers.
that.
I thought that was definitely one of my favorite moments that sticks out in my mind.
I totally remember that now, and yeah, you're absolutely right. I love it how we've been really lucky with how we haven't given the guests sometimes no heads up on what we're going to talk about. In fact, usually no heads up.
Usually not.
And most of the time they're right with it. They know they have something huge to say, or they're even really experts in what we talked about. I think about Mike Rosen from Oberlin, and back to the Hedy Lamarr and the. He was so excited. He kept interrupting us with like you couldn't get through your segment because he was so knowledgeable about that topic. We didn't plan that. It just says something about our community and the type of energy people have for this, or something. I mean, I don't know. I can't put my finger in words on exactly what.
Megan?
Yeah, Megan, did you pick a favorite?
I can't pick a favorite. I guess
Megan,
the first thing that came to mind, because now that I'm browsing through all these, I have a million favorites. But when you were Laurel, when you were talking about the Artist's Way, yeah, that was I really enjoyed that. And yeah, I kind of have like a book list now, from all the things that you've reported on, which is cool.
Megan, I have to say my favorite of yours, and it just struck me, I think, in either the way you presented it or the timing of it or something, but the Foo Fighters big 1,000-piece band or whatever, that was really fun. And I have to say, I feel like I get to benefit extra from these because I do the episodes with you guys, and then I edit them, and then I sometimes listen to them again after. So it's really good to listen to these things. I don't know. I know for me, repetition makes things sink into my head a lot better.
Yeah.
I think probably my favorite. I don't like. I was gonna say my favorite episode, but I'll just say one of my favorite episodes because Emil Richards was up there too for me. But the Ed Smith episode for me was fun because Ed is just like the warmest person, and he's. I would say arguably my greatest role model in music. So to be able to sit in a room with Ed and just talk about music for an hour was just like one of the best hours spent of my life.
Absolutely.
He was really inspiring. I really enjoyed that episode as well.
I loved editing his episode because I don't know if you guys have gone back and watched that one, but I brought in a whole lot of that shadow puppet theater stuff, which when he mentioned it, I didn't really know what it was. I thought it was more like Satie shadow theater, like French shadow theater, but it's so different. I mean, if you guys haven't seen that, and if you listeners haven't seen that, just make sure you just get eyesight on what those shadow puppets look like. It's really, really cool.
Do you guys remember the Halloween episode?
Yes.
Yeah, Bill Shaltis. Yeah, that was
Bill
serious.
Shelton.
We'll have to
Oh,
keep that up.
Like Megan just had that giant like cutout
Oh,
the whole time.
that was good. That was good.
And I had the
I
penguin
still have to go
costume.
back and like watch that one a couple of times, and I'm still
Right.
like laughing.
Yeah, the penguin costume. That's
And I
right.
kept flapping my flippers when I wasn't looking.
So I thought, since Megan just mentioned books, Laura, why don't you tell us? We have some stats for everyone. I guess we'll call them stats.
Casey
It's
has
not
stats,
very
and I have stats.
right. We have stats and scores on some things. So Laura, why don't you tell
They're
us some of the
prizes.
stuff you read from and the books you've drawn from on the last 100 episodes?
Yeah, so I read in their entirety 7 different books: Creativity, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, How to Write to Win, Notes to Myself, The Artist's Way, Social Psychology of Musicianship, and Superbrain. And then I read at least 14 articles. I couldn't really count them all, from Mindful, Yoga Journal, Neuron, New Music Box, Slate.com, and I also read a lot of other blogs and articles online.
Yep. I'll do my little contribution here. I just went back through our Google Sheets. So listeners, a way we organize this by guest and by, because we all take turns inviting the guests. So if Ben happens to bump into someone, or like Megan said, she just bumped into Ron Samuels, so she booked him. And I happened to bump into Zoltan from Amadinda. We judged together in Taiwan, and I recorded him, and it was like a great episode. So a way we keep all that organized is in these Google Docs and Google Sheets. So something people have asked is, so what's your podcast going to be about, and what kind of percussionist are you going to focus on, and how diverse are you going to try to be? And I don't know if we've really tried to be anything, if I can be honest. I think it's just, well, let's see who we bump into. I just tried to get a sense of what types of people we ended up getting. So I made a couple categories. And of course, if someone applied to a new category, I invented the category. But they go like this. They go soloist, university, administration. So that meaning not like an administrator necessarily, but perhaps they organize a camp or something. Or they run some type of business. People who do things with youth, composers, industry, orchestral percussionists, world percussionists, jazz percussionists, other, there were a few others, people in professional percussion ensembles, marching, chamber groups, and then I just added one for overseas. So if we were talking to someone in a foreign country, I thought it'd be interesting to know how many there were. So when all those scores add up, we talked to 29 soloists, and keep in mind a lot of these overlap. So Mike Burrett, for instance, is one of these soloists, and he's also in the university category. So, and then of course there were people that fit into categories, but we didn't interview them in that way, so I didn't give them a check mark for that. So it's not very thorough, but it gives you kind of a general idea. So 29 soloists, 40 in the university, 34 in the administration. This was really surprising to me, just how many of our guests are performers, educators, but also organizers. So Ted Adkatz, for instance, we talked to him about organizing his seminar a lot. And we talked to him while he was at his seminar. And of course, a huge portion of what he does while he's there is organize that seminar. People who teach young percussionists, there were 7. So that would be, for instance, Keith Aleo teaching at Interlochen. I gave him a tick mark for that. And composers, we got 14. So these are people like Alejandro Vignao and Mark Applebaum, for instance, and Ivan Trevino, a lot of overlap there. Industry people, we had 6. So say Keith Aleo also got a tick mark for that. Jeff Mulvihill, definitely firmly in industry. Orchestra, we got 13. Those are, of course, Tom Sherwood when he was in the Atlanta Symphony. Now he's in Cleveland. Sean Tilburg, Phoenix Symphony. Ted Adkatz, of course, also got a check mark for that. World percussionists, we got 6. Jazz, we got 8. Other, we got 5. So these were people like Mike Schultz, who's definitely working at a university, but he's doing all those tests in the brain and the mind and Arl, also Mike Cerrito, certainly in the other category. Professional percussion ensembles, people were 8. So Zoltan Rotz is a good example of a recent one. Marching was 4. So, of course, Paul Rennick was his obvious recent suspect for that one. But also I counted Brian Calhoun for that one. He's our episode number 1. And although that's not his professional job right now, we talked to him a lot about marching and his time in the Blue Devils, if you guys remember. Chamber groups, so things outside of percussion ensembles, I got 11. And we had 14 international interviews. So I thought that was pretty... I don't know what that really means, but that's where those numbers landed. And as far as guests booked, let's see. Megan, you booked 21. Ben, you also booked 21. Laurel booked 17. And I won, booking 32.
What's the prize?
We gotta pick up the slack here, ladies.
The prize, I don't know. I got to give myself a prize at some point. Yeah, I have to say some of those were. I had a little bit of an advantage because I went out and did some interviews, so without organizing a whole episode. So I got a few extras there. And if you're keeping score, listening, you'll notice the total of those numbers I just listed is only 91, yet we're at 100 episodes. So, of course, that's because some episodes were 2-parters, some did not have guests, etc.
Sure.
So anyway, those are my numbers, guys. I reported clean numbers.
Well, I came up with some stats to report, too. So I went through and I tallied up the time of every single episode down to the second. And if you were to play every At Percussion episode so far and listen to them all in one fell swoop, it would take you 4 days, 12 hours, 36 minutes, and 12 seconds.
Oh, that's it?
Oh my God.
But that's, non-stop, all day long, all night long.
Right.
And then my statistics came from YouTube, so a lot of people listen, I think, audio only now. So especially the earlier episodes had some inflated numbers when it was only on YouTube. But, so let's see here. We have 1,073 Facebook fans and 530 YouTube subscribers. Our total views on YouTube are 28,790. And the top 5 most viewed episodes, number 5 was Ivan Trevino with 850 views. Number 4 was episode 48 with Rob Knopper, who had 879 views. Number 3 was episode 19 with John Parks, who had 898 views. Number 2 was episode 2 with Michael Eagle, who had 988 views. And anyone want to take a guess at the top episode, most viewed episode on YouTube?
I thought it was our number 1 episode, right?
Anyone else?
Isn't it Brian Calhoun?
Is it Steve?
I was going to say Steve, but...
It is Brian Calhoun.
Cool.
Yes!
I should know that. I'm the one managing that page. So
just for reference, Michael Eagle had 988 views. Brian Calhoun had 1,428. So
way to go, Brian.
If we're giving out awards today, Casey gets one for most people booked, Brian gets one for most views, and I get one for most historical segments.
You definitely do. It's very interesting, I think. It all is very interesting. And people often ask, so how is it going? How's your viewership? And it's so hard to know because I honestly don't run into many people who tell me they listen to it via YouTube. So I think a lot of our listens are on Laurel's end because she is managing the Blogspot page, which is hosting the iTunes, what's that called? The feed.
Yeah.
Host
the RSS feed, which goes to like all the podcatchers.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's really hard to tell, and I thought I would say something about I'm really happy we got through 100 episodes, and I've had very few disasters. The only disaster we had was the Jennifer Higdon episode, which the technology failed us. You guys remember it?
And it was such a good episode too.
I know, it was really, really good. It was so nice, and it was just so telling about her, and I don't know. Yeah, it was such a bummer. So if only that would have been the Pius Chang episode that failed, would have been great. But so yeah, I feel really lucky about that. I was gonna say we have had very little criticism. I've run into maybe one critical comment, which was also very positive. A fella said, "Hey, love the show, but isn't this supposed to be a percussion podcast?" And that's all they said. And I think that is a good point. But I also realize I really like the topics that are general art topics, and like the Foo Fighters thing Megan did, or the Hedy Lamar, or and I think the one that he brought it up on was one of my Wonder Woman things, which I know those can sometimes go on too long, so I think I can watch that. But I think the topic itself is really interesting and like worth talking about, and I think that's really cool. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think we should keep doing those things. But
yeah, it's interesting. Both of our, or at least my reaction was like, dude, you can get shop talk anywhere.
Yeah.
Like shop talk is so easy. But I feel like there's I don't know, like to be a responsible musician now, just like Steve said in his speech, like you have to have a responsibility with like the rest of the world and what art means. And yeah, you can't just ignore it and put it in a bubble and only talk about it. It's almost like that turns it into a hobby to ignore how it fits in with the rest of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I appreciate it. I think it does say something about like, okay, yeah, so maybe I can be too long-winded on certain things or something, or maybe you have to know when to like, okay, stop doing research on this because it's now bleeding into the 30-minute area, and that's way too long for a non-percussion segment.
I had that problem.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I think we're always able to relate it. And I mean, 4.5 days of nothing but just percussion talk. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah, sure.
I think, this is about us too, and our relationship as four people, and our relationship with art and music and percussion, and also our listeners. And I think, yeah, like you're saying, Laurel, I think it's very inclusive if it's just percussion.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I mean, I think percussionists talking about stuff is still about percussion, Yeah. But I want to tell that listener, thanks. I appreciate it. It's well said and kind. We did have one troll on an episode on YouTube, and it was simply because they did not like the guest. They had some contentious past with the guest, and yeah, it was something I hopped on because he was attacking you guys and what we're doing, which pissed me off, and I fired back, and I definitely won. So
in YouTube comments, I remembered this conversation, but I forgot. We can talk about it later. I forgot who it was.
He since deleted his portion, so it's gone. But I have our whole private Facebook conversation.
That's right. Okay, I remember this.
Yeah. So it's interesting, and I would just put it into the category of criticism. And one thing the person did bring up was why did you book this guest? This other person would have been a better guest for this topic. That's right, Ben, you guessed it in the chat there. But yeah, this other person would have been is much more how did he word it? Is much more worthy of this topic, and much more of a established professional for this topic. And I would just respond by saying, well, that's not what we're always after. It is great to get a big name composer like Alejandro Viñao, but I'm also really interested in having a master student on who is new at something, and getting people that are at different stages in their career. So no, please don't think our guests are thought of in this way and chosen because of their more or less deserving or whatever. That's just not how we're doing it. Right. And if you want us to do it that way, sorry, go to hell.
Right.
Yeah.
Nor are we choosing our guests of who's going to get us the most views or something. I love that that's not a concern of right. How do we move this to the next level? It's no, we just want to talk to people who are passionate about things.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something else I want to say I'm really proud of. we're not trying to make any money doing this. I know, I know. One time I said that, and Ben said, "Speak for yourself, Casey. I'd love to make a little money," but but people have said this many times. Like, this is a big podcast, and you have a lot of people. You could probably make some money, and I'm not interested yet. And those stats Ben gave about viewership and likes and growth or whatever, I'm really happy to say I didn't push this thing on the university percussion page or the all marimba page or anything. No, like none of this advertising BS. This is just a thing we're doing because we like to do it. And if it doesn't make us any money, that's perfectly fine with us.
Perfectly fine.
No, we don't have
Casey.
to pay any taxes. That's good.
Perfectly fine with Casey. Yeah.
Still waiting for my $1 million check.
You have that mic. I bought you that mic.
We should try to make enough money to buy ourselves dinner at PASIC. Let's do that.
We're definitely still in the red, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mics, the software, and the dinner, it's all in the red for sure. Yeah.
Is everybody going to PASIC this year?
I think so.
I haven't even thought about
Are
it,
you guys?
honestly.
Laurel got a presentation accepted again.
Oh, yeah. Yay. What is it, Laurel? Can you tell us about it?
It's my Percussion Mind thing with Mike Cerrito.
Oh, right. That's great. So he'll come with you?
Yep.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome.
We're excited about it.
How's that going, by the way? Are you still doing surveys and stuff?
Well, the survey part's over. We're in the analysis stage. Cool. And yeah.
Awesome.
It's neat.
Awesome. Well, guys, I think thanks so much for 100 episodes, and I guess cheers to 100 more. And to everyone listening, thanks a lot. Please keep giving us comments, and if suggestions arise, please. We've gotten so few, our egos can take it. So please give us some. And yeah.
You know the one statistic we didn't do with what we should have?
What's that?
Animal appearances.
Oh, that's right. That would have been harder to document. Yeah, definitely a couple cats, definitely a couple dogs.
I remember Mike Rosen's dog. I remember, what's the guy? Steve Schick's former student that we had a dog.
Megan's favorite dog was Hank.
Hank, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was almost a naked kid.
That's John Parks.
John Parks.
Oh yeah, right.
Where are your pants? Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Hey, well, thanks everybody, and we'll catch you on episode 101, which will be Gene Kaczynski. So catch you guys then.
Woo.
All right. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.